Good morning, gamers. Today we have a new video about Halo Infinite since it just released, and the sandbox in this game is so much fun to mess around with. Last time we did a video like this, it was about the grapple, but today we are talking about the thrusters in the game. So before we get started, make sure you're subscribed to the channel as we push to 1K subs, and let's get into it. So the thrusters in Infinite are actually great. They're definitely one of my favorite abilities to use. They're definitely not as powerful as the grapple or the repulsor, but it's still extremely useful. You can use thruster for just about everything in this game. You can use it to rotate properly, you can use it to get into fights, you can use it to get out of fights, you can use it to win your fights. So we're going to go through and talk about each of these points individually. Thrusters are great for getting around the map in general and getting good rotations in. For example, you can make jumps that you normally can't if you pop the thrust at the right time. You can also use this to get the timings for your rotations a little bit better. For example, if you just disengaged a fight here and you know you want to rotate to the room to take a fight, you can speed up your rotation, so instead of having to take a straight 1v1 when you get there, you get a bit of an earlier peek that the enemy wasn't expecting, and there you have the advantage in that fight. Now all you have to do is not whiff your shots. Fast rotations are a very underrated part of all the movement abilities that just doesn't get enough recognition. By the way, if you want to hang out and talk about all this stuff or just want some entertainment, make sure you follow me over at twitch.tv/Crips6, where I stream extremely often. Now, let's discuss how you can use the thrusters to have better fights and win them. You can use the thrusters to engage your fights in a better manner. For example, if you're standing on top of mid here and someone is about to engage you from directly in front, you can use the thruster quickly to have a fast reposition to get right behind them. This gives you the first few shots of the fight and confuses the enemy about what the heck just happened, so you get the advantage. You can also use the thrusters mid-fight. This maneuver is all about confusing your opponent. We'll go a bit more in depth about this later, so make sure you watch the video all the way through. But you can be mid-gunfight against the enemy and thrust at any given point in it. Since you know what you're doing and can adjust your aim accordingly, and your enemy doesn't know, you should be able to get the advantage in the firefight if you use it correctly. Last best use case before we get into all the small tips and intricacies of the mechanic is disengaging from fights. If you come from Valorant, you can think of this as a jet dash. A lot of times, if you're in a gunfight and you're close to a corner like this, you can use the thruster to get out of a tricky situation. So say you realize you're about to lose an engagement, but you can't just run away because you'll die anyways from that. Well, you can use the thruster to dash behind cover, giving you that time you need to figure out what you want to do next. This is great for preserving your life when you need to. Alright. Now we're going to get into the more general tips and what you can really do with the thrusters in Halo Infinite. One thing I noticed while watching this first weekend of HCS was this really cool play where if you and an enemy have each other damaged down to 1 melee, but you're outside melee range, you use your thrusters to surprise the opponent and win the fight. Pretty useful if you desperately need to win that fight. As far as movement goes and the thrusters, you can't really... I tested a little bit and I couldn't really find a cool way to start a bunny hop with the thrusters or anything, because the thrusters slow you down before they're done. So you can't really preserve your momentum too much. But if you guys do find something like that, hit me up in Discord, at me on Twitter, do whatever you need to do. But the one thing I will say about the movement using the thrusters is that in my small test I'm showing on screen now, is that you do seem to get a bit more distance if you use the thrusters going forward than if you use the thrusters going backwards, so that's just something you need to keep in mind. The last thing we'll cover is the most general tip in this video. The most important thing to remember to do when using thrusters is to confuse your enemies. Whether you're rotating faster or just taking your fights differently, you always want to outsmart your opponents. I said earlier I would talk about confusing your opponents, and the best example of this is using the thrusters mid gunfight. This is best done if you're pretty close to your opponent, meaning they have to adjust where they're aiming a lot more than if you did this when they were far away from you. But the point of a straight 1v1 Halo gunfight is hitting your shots while making the enemy miss theirs. This is usually done by your strafe. You make the other dude miss by constantly moving back and forth and them not knowing exactly where you are. The thruster adds to your ability to outdo your opponent with your strafe. Using it mid-fight essentially makes for a stronger strafe that makes it harder for the enemy to hit you. And since you know what you're doing, you can adjust your aim properly and keep hitting your shots. This will give you the advantage in the fight. Anyways guys, that's it for this video. Make sure if you enjoyed it to subscribe to the channel and like the video. If you like these Halo videos or have any questions, make sure you comment down below or come talk to me at twitch.tv/Crypt6. Click all the links down in the description below, the Twitter, join the Discord. But anyways guys, thank you for watching. It does mean a lot. I'll see you guys next week. GG's and goodbye.